I wanted to speak to everyone about elitism as it is determined by the society we live in, but has nothing to do with realities. But we've set up a society that instead of going east and west goes north and south. It's set up from the top down. So the elites run everything and everybody else just falls in line with it depending on whether it benefits them or not. In the black community, we have been bamboozled, fooled into thinking that those who have great educations, quote unquote great educations, whatever that means, whatever's been deemed as a great education, makes them more valuable in our society, and therefore they should have the say. And therefore, when they're given to us as leaders, we should listen to them because they know more, they know better, they've been accepted, and acceptance in society means that they should run things. And I want people to consider, because I'm going to come back with this on another post about Donald Trump and what's happening in America right now, and the fact that this country was founded by a bunch of white men who themselves we never questioned as to how they were allowed to set up this country the way it was from the elite standpoint, as opposed to a bunch of farmers who could have gotten together and wrote something that was a hell of a lot more comprehensive and down to earth for the people who were out here, not so highfalutin that we had to go back and continually talk about what it actually meant, because we weren't now in the minds of great white men. But I don't want to digress into that at this point. I really want to talk about the eliteness that happens in black world. And it comes from the standpoint of a friend of mine, Meredith Bill, wrote something the other day about HT, Houston Tillerson University. Another friend of mine wrote something about how he felt about Negroes who had navigated and negotiated through this system in a way that they were now, quote unquote, successful. And then I want to talk about what Black Agenda Report wrote. Well, in fact, I'm going to reverse it, because they went all the way back to 1963. And I go back to, if you really want to have a real debate about where Black America stands and why it stands where it is a debate that happened right around the beginning of the last century, 1900s, when W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington were having a conversation about being dragged out of where we were and putting the onus on us. Neither one of them putting the onus on the system that was. And then looking at what Marcus Garvey said, which was, we got to get the hell away from this altogether, because you're not going to get anything from a system that was set up with you being a slave, where you had no flag, you had no country, you had no nothing. But I fast forward to 1963, and the fact that we were given Martin Luther King, and I'll go to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which is the epitome of everything that's wrong with us, as far as I'm concerned with what Black America has happened to us and with us in Black America, how we've been handed heroes. And understand, even as milquetoast as Martin was, he was hated in his day by most of America, because that's the way they vilify anyone that rebels against or says anything against the system the way it's set up now. It's white dominance and superiority. And Martin was addressing it, but in the most mundane, laid-back fashion you can, and even he got arrested over 30 times. But they were referring to the battle of conversations that happened about who would speak, who would be allowed to speak at the Great March in 1963. And they made sure that certain people were not allowed to speak, or certain people didn't speak. And A. Philip Randolph, who actually had talked about trying to set that march up for years, didn't speak. He's the one who actually wanted that thing to happen. James Baldwin was not allowed to speak. Bayard Rustin was not allowed to speak. John Lewis's speech was watered down to the point where it basically said very little, and it was the most fiery thing that was said all day. But the speech that we continually all hearken back to was the great I have a dream speech. In America, the dream is a nightmare for black people. The dream is a nightmare for the Native American. The dream is a nightmare for damn near everybody that's not a rich white man or anybody that supports the systems that we're in, so they can be comfortable in their however they talk about being comfortable. So I talk about the fact that we were given Martin and that speech and the nonsense that it was. And we're not talking about the other people who were raising hell at the time about the way that we were being treated. Stokely Carmichael was raising hell. He's like, no, I'm not taking no ass whoopings. Malcolm X was taking, I'm not taking no ass whoopings. There were people who were saying, I'm not taking no ass whoopings. But there are people out here right now who still think that peaceful protests are not being set up by people to make sure that you keep maintaining right where you are. I'm amazed at how many people are freaked out by the burning of a building, but not freaked out by a bullet to the back of the head. Not freaked out by a 12-year-old. And when someone says I'm an all lives matter person, you automatically let me know you're a racist son of a bitch. You're not all lives. You're only about white supremacy because you never protested Tamir Rice being shot, Rekia Boyd being shot. You've never protested any person of color being mistreated by the system set up the way they were. I always, when people jump on Facebook and start putting these factoids on, you gotta go back and go, hold on a second, that is not what happened. That wasn't the outcome. So we look at 1963 and I fast forward that into where we are today. And in the conversation that this professor at UT, who spoke about all the brothers who know, and he gave shout outs to them. Shout outs to all my elite brothers who have made it, they're successful. It always, it's more upsetting to me to hear that than anybody can imagine. Because I know brothers out here who are not quote unquote successful in the way that America has deemed success, which is you live in a nice big ass house that you don't need, drive around cars that cost too damn much, put on more clothes than you'll ever need to wear. Your closet is overflowing with crap. You never throw it out because it's a sign of how much shit you got. At the same time, you've left behind communities that have suffered continuously. You speak to them only in third world terms, as if you're not connected, as that's not where you came from, because that ain't got nothing to do with you. And it's the elite, it's the educated elite that do a lot of that. And that's where Du Bois and Booker fell out. You know, Booker was like, let's just go ahead and, you know, grind this out and we'll make do. And so he was kind of right. It's work. And WEB said, well, what we'll do is we'll educate a bunch of the ones who can do well, and then they'll train them to go back and give back and raise, uplift, and to help the community. At the time, it was actually an okay thought process because we weren't allowed to move out of our communities. So you were in a community that had a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a pharmacist. We did everything in our own communities because everybody there had to be, and you go back and look at the history of things, because when Martin integrated us into that burning house, that's exactly what he did. He destroyed our communities by taking the talent out of the communities. When I say talent, I'm talking about the money people. I'm talking about the people who have the credentials, the letters behind their names. Because I had to tell people this all the time. I said, my son was traveling to West Texas just recently, going to school. I said, so son, let me ask you something. I'm gonna put things in perspective for you. If you're traveling across West Texas, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you got a doctor that's written books on automotive engineering, and you got a dentist with you who can fix your teeth because, you know, in case you get a toothache, and you got a mechanic in the back seat, and that car breaks down, who at that very moment has the most value? So our problem is not understanding circumstances and situations, is and it's how we look at the value of something or someone. But we all have value. But that mindset has been handed down to black people also, and therefore those are the ones we have to continually gaze upon as our heroes, and or the people who are given credence, as it were, in our societies as the ones we're supposed to look up to. So when you go in the media and look at what's happening, well, there's that doctor, there's that person over there that has been given their authority and success as it's deemed successful in our society, the way it's set up. And yet, our communities continue to suffer. Well, if those people are our heroes, why are our communities suffering the way they are? If you people are doing so well, why in the fuck is our community doing so poorly? Y'all been going to school for a while. What you doing in the hood? What you doing in the neighborhood? Not what you doing at the university that my kids can't afford to go to, or that they do get there when they graduate, they got $95,000, $150,000 worth of debt if they were allowed in. What you doing? And I want to say that because when I say why are our neighborhoods doing so poorly, why do we continue to suffer? Because we've been given people as our heroes, as the people we look up to, as the people as our go-tos, who don't give a shit about what happens to us. It's about their own little fiefdom. And that goes to my friend Meredith Beale, because he wrote something a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke to what happened at HT. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. A friend of mine, Jonathan Clark, the former vice president of Motown Marketing, and Meredith Beale's a billionaire, and he brought him out here, and they were going to do some great things at HT, because realizing that a lot of what we're being provided in our communities that lifts us up is entertainment, whether we like it or not. Entertainment is what is all kind of money in entertainment. Being able to do, run a football, that's an entertainment piece, whether you like it or not. Shooting a basketball, that's an entertainment piece. But we also do music, and how many jobs are connected to that, and it's all behind the scenes situation. And they said, well, this is what we'll do. Because of his connections, Jonathan's connections to LA, they went out and brought MC Hammer in at the time MC was still doing stuff, and daughter was here, and she was going to UT at the time. And Meredith writes about this. Who all they brought out here? The president of Motown at the time, Gerald Busby, came out, and they were going to bring a whole bunch of money to HT. I'm talking about millions of dollars. This was just the upfront money, not all the things that were going to come behind that. And here was the plan. We're going to have to blow this university up that ain't got 1,000 kids. They ain't got 1,000. We're going to blow it up in a way that every black kid in America is going to want to come here. Every brown kid, any that's creative is going to want to come here. We're going to create an education, entertainment, technology complex. We're going to give you $10 million up front to build it. You put my name on that building, boop, 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 and we go. And they said, well, we got to take that idea to the board. And at the time, the board was run by Wilhelmina Delco, one of those black folks that have been given to your community. Given to your community as a leader. You have to ask yourself a question: why has the black community done so poorly in Austin? Right now, Asians outnumber black people in Austin, because black people are getting the hell out as fast as they can pack a U-Haul, if they can afford a U-Haul. Otherwise, they just getting the hell out, and they ain't taking nothing with them, because it's too expensive to live in Austin for black folks. And you provide nothing for black folks in Austin. A friend of mine is in charge of the Austin Justice Coalition. I laugh at him all the time and say, hey, brother, I'm saving black Austin. Negro, shut up and sit down. There is no black Austin, and you ain't saving shit. You ain't creating no money. You arguing about the police, man. I don't give a damn about police beating me down if I ain't got a job at the end of the day. Oh, they ain't beating me. Well, I still can't eat. I still can't afford my rent. Y'all, Austin Justice Coalition don't mean shit if I can't afford to be here. Just not being beat ain't stopping me from dying. Totally unfocused on what the problem is and who the problem is. So at some point in time, you got to realize we've been given Wilhelmina Delco and was followed up by Donna Dukes. And then wonder why the black side of town, the black folks suffered the way they did. They suffered because we were told she was on our side, but yet when they brought an opportunity for them to blow up Houston-Tillotson, create an education and entertainment technology studio where kids would have lined up and all kind of money would have flowed through the place, she made sure it didn't happen. That's what that elite bullshit gets you. She didn't see the value in what they were doing. So the fiefdom that she created didn't happen. Understand the Negroes that you're talking to, that you keep going to, that you keep looking up to. That's a problem. Has been for years for us. I keep talking about people out here. When you tell me that you're about the country, that you're patriotic, you're about the military, the police, and you're about the education that our kids are receiving, you have to ask yourself a question. And that you're a Christian. Who set up the systems to make you genuflect to the people that you are? And are those people given to you to keep you right where you are or go backwards? To take your labor, your skills, your talent, and use it to their benefit, and you get nothing out of it. It's part of the black world, has been for years, but it's also part of what's happening to the rest of America, and y'all are too stupid to even know that's what's going on. Welcome to another episode of The Blackening.